public viewing and listening. In-person attendees of the meeting will be included in this recording. By remaining in this meeting, in-person attendees agree that their images and or voices may be included in these recordings. At this time, I'd like to ask about, for a motion for some excused absences. Luann is out of town and Samantha is still on maternity leave. Okay. Second, Josh, all in favor of granting excused absences? Samantha may have just rolled in. Oh, her maternity leave is over, maybe. We have to redo that motion. Then, yes, I do have to redo the motion and we have to find your name tag. You're not there. Just sit there. Oh,
There it's coming through. Come to me.
all right, so let's redo the motion for an excused absence for Luann. I do see Barrett right there. Cool. So the motion is just for that. Josh just. Well, second, anybody want to second the motion? Okay, all in favor of excusing Luann only? Welcome back, Samantha.
Thank you.
There. Minutes for approval. Scott had sent out draft minutes from the June meeting. Sent them out last Thursday. We have any review comments, feedback? Motion to approve. Motion to approve the minutes. Second by Robert. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor of approving? Yeah. Public comment. This is an in-person meeting. Comments made by the attendees upon registering will be registering at the in-person meeting, indicating you would like to speak. So we have two. Okay.
Chelsea is first and then he.
Chelsea, if you don't mind. Typically, we have 3 minutes allocated for public comment. If you don't mind, someone on up. Tell us who you are.
Chelsea Estragi. I own a house on Frank Street near Brookside. And we bought the house in 2019. We moved away, moved back, assuming that we'd be able to build on it. We went down about a year process with an architect and builders to do plans to build a second story on our house. And not until the very last minute in permitting did it get denied based on a flood study that we can't find anywhere. So our builders have asked a bunch of people at the Stormwater City Department, apologies. Nobody's gotten back to them. It seems like a little bit of stonewalling at this point. It's been several weeks. A lot of money went into this, a lot of time. So my request to you guys is, one, I'd love to see the maps, please. Need to know where my property sits. Two, please get back to my builder. It's a lot of money, their money, my money, time. And three, I think this flood study had unintended consequences for people's homes. We're about 5 houses away from the creek. We do sit in an area where that gets a lot of water. We as homeowners have put our own money in to fix that issue. We put in catch drains that shoot straight to the creek. We've done what we need to do. The city did a study 4 years ago. We haven't seen anything actually happen. And it's been 4 years, I haven't seen the map. So I guess the question
Your
for the
last
committee,
name, your last name and your address would be.
ESHRAGHI, and the address is 607 Frank Street. I think I saw the map come up on your computer. I'd love to see it. And ask maybe why it hasn't been public for 4 years and why houses have been able to go in on Brookside, specifically in 2024, that are way below our elevation.
Did you get that?
The 607 Frank Street.
Yeah.
Yep.
Who's your builder and who's the contact with the stormwater department?
My builder is Armature. I think I might have seen Stan on here. If you could unmute him. Not sure what the smile was about, but.
I've heard of it.
Oh, good. Okay, me too.
We can't.
We cannot find you.
We cannot.
That's fine. I know they have other business, today, so.
I think there's a lot of stormwater staff here today. We're
Okay.
not as a commission in position to
And I
facilitate
understand.
that, but I, all the right folks at Stormwater Department are here.
Okay.
That would need to follow up with you, I believe.
Yeah, if you're able to stay at the meeting, we'd be glad to talk to you or follow up specifically and answer your question.
I need to jump on a call right now, but I'm done at 4.
Okay,
now,
that'll be done. Could you,
I can come back.
give that gentleman your phone number and email maybe and make sure that we're reaching out to you?
Okay,
We'll get back to you ASAP.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I believe you were here. Send some slides in. Right?
Trying to communicate as much helpful information as I can. So I am trying to advocate for the concept of creek streets, where it specifically addresses how parcels along creeks are developed or anticipated to be developed. Next slide, please. So the idea is it's a planning strategy for the city of Raleigh to anticipate the development and have additional assessments and design overviews for stormwater creek infrastructure needs. Because these are evolving systems, right now is kind of the time that we need to step in and do a little more. When the city of Raleigh rezoned everything to R10 to increase development and density projects, which is a good thing. There was a consequence of these creek-lined properties just becoming a little bit more vulnerable because there wasn't another layer of oversight with that development. Next slide, please. Right now, the way things seem to operate is the project plan gets submitted on a parcel by parcel basis. So the developer can submit plans that encompass either a couple or several lots, but each parcel goes through the permitting process and has its own sort of approval process within that scope of the administrative level. What I'm trying to advocate for is, well, that doesn't give much responsibility or awareness of the creek systems, because if nobody is looking at a connected system, then why are we approving things in a segmented way? Next slide. So on the left is kind of how it's approached right now, where each lot has that purple sort of land mass that is calculated into the R10 65% impervious surface maximum limit. And what that does is it creates a really large footprint of impervious surface right up to sewer easements or riparian buffers. And we know that the buffers are eroding. So that 50-foot buffer is changing. It's already in the sewer easement, sometimes right over that sewer line already. This is just in the case of Brookside. And there's no post-development plan for maintenance. So it continues to go unchecked with strategy to keep it in its integrity and check. Adjusting the impervious surface limit would change that calculation of 65% impervious surface maximum. And it gives a little bit more green space for something to happen. And that is a big change that could feasibly give more time for stormwater to even get to the creeks. So if they're not able to address the 75% of stream banks being severely or very eroded, it's overwhelming, and we can't keep going on to address things when they fail. The concept of creek streets would be that we have to look at it comprehensively. Next slide, please. And it's just the hope that we analyze it as a connected system, knowing that these individual projects may not have a significant change to the creek system itself, but when it's multiple developments happening in a neighborhood that line a creek, and nobody is maintaining that creek or taking responsibility of it, then it is just problematic. So if there was an additional asset to creek-lined parcels that just had a little bit more oversight from the city, we could talk with developers to see what that would look like. So if they invest in making new changes to pre-planned parcels, maybe that gives them incentive to have additional density projects in the area. And that kind of conversation, I think, is kind of where we need to be. So for that makes some amount of sense, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Sorry. Oh, did you?
No, I was just gonna say, can you make sure we get that as an email? Can we get that as, can we receive that?
Yeah,
Okay.
is it in the minutes? Okay, would you like?
Yeah,
to-
the minutes,
Before that.
For the minutes.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
Sorry.
No, so I don't currently do this work, but I'm just wondering if there's any consideration of secondary impacts. Does anyone know as this process moves forward?
Sounds, this would be some type of zoning overlay request. Yeah, that would be a text change.
Yeah, we were talking about maybe looking at some of those 100.
Yes, yes, they can, this could be. Yeah, sure. So agree with good.
What I'm hearing is,
I don't
And I
have
don't-
something like that.
I don't know that I think I'm interpreting this properly, but just removing unbuildable areas, sorry, riparian buffers and wetlands from impervious surface calculations is kind of the proposal. So, and
Yes.
what I wonder is, because I know that, there's some preemption issues around like double counting, when it comes to riparian buffers and tree preservation requirements, but I don't know if that applies to impervious surfaces as well. Like, would it be possible theoretically to create, to look at creating impervious limits that don't factor in riparian buffers?
That has been previously suggested by, I think, look at, to back that out. Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking for two.
But I think there's also I want to say she was proposing a benefit to some other trade-off, like kind of like the in a transit-oriented development situation where you get an additional half a floor or more units because you don't get impervious, you get something else.
Yeah, there's some intent.
I don't want to get ahead of us. That's Bill 162. Preempt some of that.
Maybe, yeah, and that's on the agenda to talk about that, but it's definitely relevant,
Yeah.
for this discussion. Yes.
Okay. So we'll, yeah, sounds like we're gonna hit on some of that soon. Okay, so thank you, Dana. We'll proceed this if we can. Okay, that closes the public comment. Planning Commission SMAC liaison conversation. There's a little bit of information in there about our role in that process. And I don't know if, I'm assuming Samantha hasn't had a chance to look at this last month's cases. Maybe you have been doing that, but Ben has been probably.
Everyone's, all the council positions on vacation, and we already have vacations. Mike comes back next Tuesday, and then the council Tuesday after that. There's a voting agenda, there's some council agenda for.
All right. This month, all right. We have some more staff updates, matters of importance, and one matter of importance, you're back. So that's great.
Glad to be back. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Yes, so, glad to be back. Sorry, I missed a couple meetings even before the July one. I do understand the first item has been discussed, but just to reiterate now, this is the first meeting that Raleigh Stormwater is officially part of the Raleigh Water Department. Director Wheeler is here. We appreciate him attending today, and I think he has addressed the commission previously with some questions. So we are looking forward and already involved with lots of discussions of collaborative opportunities. And so we look forward to sharing those with you. And that, I think, is maybe one of the parts of the new work plan development as a topic for further discussion on our later agenda item. So very excited about that reorganization. Also related to Raleigh Water, we're pleased to report that July has been almost a record rainfall month. I think it was the second wettest July on record since 1930 or something like that. And it has had very positive impacts on refilling our water supply reservoirs. Even to the point where, Raleigh Water has been able to, lift the water restrictions that had been in place prior to that as of August 3rd. So still encouraging water conservation, good use of water as always, but the formal water restrictions have been lifted. Falls Lake is not full, but to the point where we would expect it to be, or pretty close to where we would expect it to be for this time of year. I might ask Mr. Wheeler what did the pool get down to? Was it about 65% at the lowest point maybe of the water supply? 62? Okay.
With on that one. I can tell some context.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was low.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think when you talk about like one rain happens.
I just wanted to add in some clarity to, just so that you know, when we're talking about with the public, we've been, talking with Raleigh Water, throughout this entire, they've been amazing at giving us totals every week. It's in the city manager's report, it has been, so it's been very transparent, really appreciative, but I think what we're wrestling with on council that I would love your advice and guidance on is we may be full now because of Mother Nature, but that doesn't negate the consumption numbers that we saw. So between 25 and 26 in May, we were 3% over consumption. And then in June, it was 8% over. So while we are so grateful for the rain, and I hope that it continues, it doesn't address the underlying cause that Raleigh residents are not listening when the restrictions come. And so that's something that we are going to have to battle even with. So hopefully the rain will always come, but if we do that, then everyone gets comfortable on using as much water as they want. And it doesn't help us in planning for the future. So as I bring in the discussion of growth, I just want you to know where I am. What I'm talking about, build, it makes me a little bit nervous when in 20 years, we've had 2 really close calls with some severe droughts. And I don't have an answer for that. And so I just want to be clear with you guys what council is discussing, and we're going to be talking about it coming the fall. I know on your agenda, we're going to have more discussions about water supply, and so is council. So really interested to see how that lines up so that we hear from the board and make sure that we're incorporating those thoughts. But I just wanted you to know what the discussion is like on that.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Next item on the bullet list, there was a question that came from the commission that we wanted to give a quick summary of House Bill 162, which has been passed regarding local government's authority to require stormwater control on redeveloped properties. And I'll ask Ben Brown to stand up and give a brief overview of that House bill.
This didn't really affect us too much. It basically just redefined kind of how we treat existing impervious, which we were already pretty much treating existing impervious. If you were replaced impervious before 2001, which is when we first had stormwater regulations, then you were exempt, or if you had a permit for new impervious between 2001 and today, essentially, that counts as existing impervious. And so it basically just kind of clarified that, which we already clarified with our last design manual update. And also some parking issues that didn't really affect us too much because Raleigh had already gotten rid of parking minimums a few years ago. So luckily we were ahead of the curve on that. So nice to be ahead of the house before rather than waiting in the crossroads for it. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
Is it approved in the House and gone to the Senate?
I think it's been, yeah. Well, it's a law.
Yeah, it's, it's a law.
Yeah, it's a law. Yeah. So, but there's other communities that do have to do some heavy work on that. We were just lucky that we were 2 different fronts from stormwater and planning. We kind of had already taken care of some of the issues associated with that. So.
And some of my colleagues in the riverkeeper world kind of footed this bill initially, and I saw, I think initially one of the hopes was to address the issue of prohibiting local governments from requiring stormwater measures on redevelopments. And I know that the ultimate result was a lot, less strong than doing that. And so from what you just said, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around what the bill actually says, from what you just said, though, it sounds like already kind of doing what the bill would require state.
If you were redeveloping and not increasing impervious, then before this bill and after this bill, you were exempt to Raleigh. It's just once you increase that impervious, when you redevelop, that's where we get involved. We make that stormwater plan, we take care of that doing impervious. And then we define pretty clearly in our stormwater design manual, what existing impervious means as far as either permitted before 2001 or permitted since 2001, some sort of stormwater treatment. So,
But then the other component tied to parking was they restricted municipalities from putting maximum or minimums down for parking.
Correct.
So that may in fact, except for the 20 coastal counties or something.
Correct, yeah.
But that may impact stormwater across the state was the hope with that, was less
Yes, and we
required impervious surface.
Yeah, and we kind of already got rid of that a few years ago,
Yeah.
so we were pretty excited. About the same time we did some of the GSI changes, that kind of went into effect through a separate track, so, yeah. It's been a little bit dry for that one.
And just one other minor provision that's relative to Commissioner Dalton's comment. There was a sentence in there that clarified the municipality's authority to provide incentives, development incentives for going above and beyond with minimum stormwater regulatory requirements. So we had interpreted, we could do that probably anyway, but there was language that just really clarified that we have the authority to do that now. Thank you. Okay, the public meeting web link, we do have some public meetings come up. We encourage people to get on there and look. And then we do have notices prior to construction for several drainage assistance projects and a stormwater pipe rehabilitation infrastructure renewal project that should get started here in the next 90 days. And that's all I had. Glad to take any questions.
The Yonkers Road stormwater thing?
Yes.
I think it happened while you were out. So that worked out well for you.
It did, yes, and the team's done a nice job responding to that. There was a stormwater pipe failure that occurred in Yonkers Road that has closed that road. We have moved forward with emergency procurement of an engineer. We have a design underway, and if someone has different information, my understanding is the contractor will start Monday next week to do the repairs, the actual repairs. So I don't have a timeline, but once the contractor starts, they will work until it's done, basically. So, yeah, good question though. And, so avoid Yonkers Road as a through road, at least for right now.
Next up, we have the modified consent agenda for Raleigh Rainwater Rewards. We've held a month or two for this. And I believe we have some new funding. Justin will talk about.
Yeah. Welcome back, everyone. Justin Harkin, Stormwater Division, manage the Raleigh Rainwater Rewards Program. I hope everyone enjoyed their snack break. We've been working. We have 16 projects that have been approved, thanks to y'all back in June. That was some of those. Staff have approved an additional 4 on top of the ones that y'all have seen. And we routed those through in the midst of a department merger. So credit to Natalie, who's sitting back there. A lot of administrative work there to push them through. So credit all around to the team too. Someone had mentioned the budget. We are operating under our new budget. It's $1 million this year. Happy to report that pending a successful presentation today, we will be at 25% towards that goal, ahead of schedule, and a lot of projects still pending. So I want to celebrate that point and the work that's gone into this fiscal year already. 22 active projects currently out in the wild right now. And I do notice a couple of new faces real quick. Raleigh Rainwater Rewards is a water quality cost share program. It incentivizes property owners, predominantly private property owners, to consider the installation of GSI, green stormwater infrastructure on their property. So it's one of the main mechanisms we use to reach those properties. We can either go new business first, then old business, or we can do old business first and new. I know at the June meeting, there were several questions around permeable pavers. And I'd love to take the opportunity. I know I have a little bit of time. We're ahead of schedule, which is unusual. Happy to unpack a little bit of that. And I was not present at the June meeting, but I was able to watch that and see all the questions, and hopefully I can answer those and answer any new ones. But whatever order the chair would like to take with this, these are 3 rain gardens, pretty run of the mill, all under the cap. Nothing unusual for that staff has pulled out. Also, these, all this should be in y'all's backup bin.
Yeah, let's do the since we're on the screen.
Motion to approve the second.
Yeah, I guess, does anybody have any questions about them? I was just looking them up on the map.
I have a quick question. It's about the third one. It looked like it was 2 projects for a neighborhood. That looked kind of cool.
I was hoping somebody would ask about that one. So this is we always like to point out our HOA partnership. So this is a multi-unit residential property where an interested individual who lived in one of those units coordinated, and I believe is even part of the HOA, got the whole community behind it. They're going to do 2 features out there to capture runoff. So this is an HOA as an applicant in a HOA space. No trees are going to be removed. It's out of the right of way. They're on the heels of another previous substantial utility identifying effort. So that is not included in this project. So they're at a good place for this, I guess is my point of bringing that up.
HOAs have the same requirements, the maintenance agreements, stuff like that.
Same things. This project be subject to 10 years maintenance legal agreement with a signature authority or someone who has authority to sign on behalf of the HOA.
I noticed that it was close to Prairie Creek and the News River too, so it's a
Yeah.
good impact there.
One of our TMDL watershed.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to take any other questions.
Questions? Questions? Yes, there you go. Motion, second, all in favor of approval?
All right, thanks. So we can go to old business if that's all right.
Great.
Appreciate all the questions about permeable pavers. Permeable pavers have a little bit of history with the program. So this Raleigh Rainwater Awards was approved in 2009. And, permeable pavers was an acceptable project at that project type at that point. 2 projects went through the process and city council said, hey, we do not want to replace driveways at 90% or at the time 50 to 90% cost. So, but we do want to support permeable pavers. So we don't want to remove them from the policy. So what they decided at that time, the Cliff Notes version, is that they said, hey, we will support what makes the driveway or the footprint permeable. So that is where the concept of the difference in cost between a traditional driveway install and a permeable driveway install. So a little bit of history there. That was back in 2015 when that change took place. And since then, we've approved 12 more across 300 some projects. So we're talking small numbers here in project numbers. So just want to kind of set the table with that background and then the number of projects we have. Now I will say 14 projects over 300 out of 300 plus projects. There's a lot of interest. Everyone loves how these look. They look at their driveway or they see something that may look like maybe maintenance or could use improvement. They want a permeable paver driveway, permeable paver sidewalk, permeable paver footprint. They're complex systems and I can get into that. And most of the time they are not able to move forward through the program because of an array of issues that I'll break down. But any questions at that point? Because I think that was a lot of that background, I think would have helped with some of the questions in June. So our process, we get an applicant who's interested in installing a permeable pavers on their property. The first thing we're going to look at, they're going to provide us an estimate. These are typically over our threshold. So they're going to provide 3 estimates. In the policy, it says that estimate cannot include the cost of demo or removal disposal of existing driveway, concrete, pavers, that's not eligible cost. So if that's in the estimate, we say, hey, this either has to be removed from this estimate or you need to redo your estimate. So that's the first, let's say, subtraction from that total cost. The second is we won't support the apron work. If they want a new apron in the right of way, that falls outside of like the entrance to your driveway that's in the right of way. That piece of concrete that's a little bit different than the rest of your driveway, out of the right of way. So our projects will be on the property side of the right of way into the property. So occasionally you'll see something in that regard. And then we will then, and so I mentioned the right of way. We will then subtract the traditional cost of installing a traditional driveway in that footprint. So a little bit of history there. I can write a really boring book about all this one day. It used to be $5 per square foot that the city would say that's the cost basis for a traditional driveway, $5 per square foot. Well, one day I was standing in front of the commission, much like today, and someone said, we need to reevaluate that. This was back during COVID era, maybe 21, maybe. You may have been there, Graham. Long story short, we reevaluated it, meaning we went back, talked to the industry, realized we were probably a little low. Point made, we upped it to $10 per square foot and brought that back to the commission. And there was no pushback on implementing the $10 per square foot. So that is what we subtract off that cost. So we have their total cost, we subtract anything that's not eligible. There's a lump sum, there's an amount there. We subtract $10 per square foot of whatever they want to put this. That is their acceptable cost. That is what we take forward to you guys and put up here and show 90% of that cost is what they're eligible. So that is what we do with the cost. And that's only one piece of it. Just keep in mind, our metric, that number right here, is cost, it's pollutant removal, and it's time. It's how long they're going to be removing that pollutant. So everyone focuses on the dollar signs. That's natural. That's us. I do too. But at the end of the day, it's 1/3 of that number. Just keep in mind. So that's how we handle the cost. I can keep going or I can stop for questions. With no questions, I'll keep going. We're talking a little bit about what prevents permanent pavers from moving forward. We have this conversation a lot. And my whole team can have it in their sleep. I could tag out right now, let Stephen come up here and finish this. So with permanent pavers, they have to have a 2% slope. So you're looking at flat areas. You have to have good infiltration. You got to be able to, that water has to go somewhere when it's captured in that subbase and that gravel. It can't be in the footprint of utilities. You can't put it against trees because of roots, because of leaf litter. There's a lot of considerations if you want to try to put it up against a permanent structure, against your house. You're capturing a bunch of runoff up against your foundation. All these things are things you have to consider. And one other thing, you can't have offsite run onto it from permeable areas. So if you're calling about your neighbor's driveway running onto your driveway, that's not going to work. If you're worried about your own landscape front yard coming on your permeable pavers, that won't work. So there's a lot of site conditions that rule it out from the start. And we get all that from the state's minimum design criteria. And I saw a couple shaking their heads. That is where that comes from. That is not Justin and Stephen, evilly writing or, evil intent writing a design manual. No, that comes, we pull from the state's professional guidance on that practice. So we use the state's MDC. We use their formulas for calculating the water quality space in these systems as well. That's where we take information that we asked in our application to calculate and check if their design will meet the water quality design storm that is in the state's guidance. So we use the state's MDC. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is how we handle it internally with City Raleigh Plan Review staff. So I know there's a lot of questions, and what it looks like is that you have a maybe small driveway, and now they're going to have a big driveway, and Raleigh Rainwater Board is going to pay for that big new driveway or that expansion. Well, not really. How it really works is that that footprint, if it's an existing footprint, no change in size, then there is not a permit needed to change that out to a permeable surface through our program. It is still considered impervious from day one to perpetuity. Just because they came through us, it does not change that designation as permeable. It is a impervious surface with plan review for those purposes. So that is the best case scenario. When somebody wants to add on to their driveway or add a footprint anywhere on the property, that is logically how we just talked about what it's like for an existing footprint. That is an expansion of impervious surface, and they have to get permitted for that expansion. They want to double the width of their driveway. Order of operations need a permit to expand that. When they get that permit, they have permission from the city, for lack of a better way of putting it, to pave that extra space. Where we're at is they come to us and say, we want to go above and beyond and do permeable pavers here instead. And that's where we have a potential for a project if all of those other boxes are checked. And so we coordinate on every permeable paver project and most other projects, I'll say, to make sure that our projects are not being used to get around impervious surface limitations, to increase footprints, to create offsets for next year, to add a patio. And to also get around some of the UDO changes with concentrated downspouts, which is another thing that hasn't quite raised its head yet, but it's something that we have to hedge against to prevent someone getting around development rules for that by using our permeable paver system. And so that I think kind of sums up most of what I know. And I have a question. All right, fire away.
$10 a square foot. You said that was last updated.
Right, I think like 2021, and I do have a slight update with that. I did a little bit of homework, and I credit to Stephen and my teams too, because we figured there'd be a question. If you need to reevaluate, how did you reevaluate it? We have a recent quote, I think as recent as this week. Am I correct in that? That had a $10 per square foot data point. That's a data point. We also reached out to one of the contractors who has done a majority of those 14 projects. And he broke down an itemized traditional driveway install cost. And the cost is a very conservative value from our data points to show that we would not be, it'd be hard to justify going more 12, 13, 14 compared to what we're hearing is the cost of a traditional driveway install. So I think that's what you were asking, and that's so
Exactly. That you're just constantly checking year to year for a change in that price.
and that is the value that y'all bring to the process is you make sure we do that. And so we did do that prior to this meeting, and we've had a lot of conversations obviously about this in preparation of trying to make sure everyone's on the same page or has any questions.
That last case was just an unusual one where there was a pool deck that hadn't been constructed yet, but they were qualifying for removal of that concrete so it's just an unusual situation.
Absolutely. And it's not as unusual as you would think, because where folks, they realize, or they have a vision of more hardscape, whatever that might be, pool deck in this case. They go get a permit. They're permitted to do it. Not all of them call us to help treat that runoff. And one thing to add, what Stephen brought up when we were prepping for this, is the unique thing about the permeable paver system, and I think it is lost on a lot of folks, is yes, it's capturing what comes out of the sky. It's no longer, that footprint is being treated. But per the state's guidance, and we have adopted it, the applicant can capture up to a 1-to-1 ratio amount of other impervious surface runoff. And so because of these numbers, we always encourage the applicant to say, hey, you should maximize that 1-to-1 ratio. So you're not only treating what's falling out of the sky, but you're also treating a quarter of your house too. And that's also runoff that would not be treated otherwise. So you don't have one here, but on that particular one, believe we were treating a tremendous amount, like 3,000 square feet of runoff, bigger than the footprint of just the pool deck. So yes, it was a good test case for us to have this discussion, or a good prompt. I agree with you there, Josh. Any other questions about permanent pavers? Yes,
Do you have any
sir.
data points on how much, paper driveway costs compared?
I will say my canned response when I'm asked this during the consult is $10 traditional, $15 permanent pavers. I've asked where the cost comes from, and it's, everyone says, contractor law, industry says, it's the excavation and backfilling with stone. It could be the rasters with pea gravel, it could be fancy stones, pavers. It's that the cost is the excavation and the backfill.
We're seeing much higher per square foot than anything paper.
I'm sorry for.
Paper related, we're seeing a
Paper.
much higher price lately. It's gone up significantly.
Do you mind me asking, do you see, is $10 a square foot for traditional concrete check out with your experience?
Yeah, I mean, for a driveway quality, I can see that,
Alright.
yeah. I mean, if it were to inch up to 12, maybe, but I think 10 is.
I know it's not to work like this where I ask you questions, but I appreciate it.
We're seeing pavers double 15. We're seeing it 25 and 30.
All right, well,
That's,
I
don't know.
when we get to number 15 on the application list, we might come across that, to your point.
It's good.
Which we took out.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much for that. Research,
All right, thanks, appreciate it.
appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. We're gonna have an update on the flood warning and dam failure response plan.
Okay, hey, everybody, how are you?
Good.
Good, thank you guys for having us. It's working. Yeah, okay. So I'm Seamus Riley with the flood. I supervise the floodplain management division within Stormwater. I'm here presenting with Allison Bryan, who is the senior floodplain engineer for floodplain management. And we are here to talk to you, to give you some updates on four connected efforts that we've been working on for quite some time, that are the repetitive loss area analysis, the program for public information, the flood warning and dam failure response plan, and the voluntary flood prone property acquisition program. And we're not just here to like fill up a time slot or anything. We're actually here at this time because two of these are going to be going before council, and we're going to ask them to adopt the repetitive loss area analysis and the flood warning and dam failure response plan in September. And we wanted to make sure that you all were well aware of what to expect and what might, what will be on the council agenda so that you weren't surprised. And if you had any questions that you guys could ask us. But so that's why we were here. We're going to kind of go back and forth based on what we kind of both been working on. So we'll hand this off a little bit, and Allison's going to kick us off talking about the repetitive loss area.
So I believe we may have introduced the repetitive loss area analysis to all back before we started the effort, but just to give you a refresher, so the repetitive loss area analysis, or RLAA as we call it, FEMA loves its acronyms. So this is an opportunity for our team and the city as a whole to look at areas throughout the city that are experiencing repetitive loss or repetitive flood damage. So not necessarily just properties that may have experienced kind of a one-off flooding event to a really intense storm or some other sort of drainage issue, but properties that have flooded at least once at least twice, and sometimes more than twice, in the case of some of these properties. So we are looking at each of these properties on an individual level. And kind of the benefit of this greater analysis is that not only do we look at these repetitive loss properties that have filed flood insurance claims more than one time, we're also expanding our lens to look at nearby buildings that may have a comparable flood risk, but that may not have filed a flood insurance claim, whether they don't have a flood insurance or they just haven't filed a claim for whatever reason, but kind of looking at conditions, it looks like there may be reason to think they have a comparable flood risk to structures that have flooded in the past. So this gives us an opportunity to connect documented flood losses with kind of looking at each property on the ground. So it also gives us an opportunity to do some outreach. So part of this effort included doing some outreach to every property owner located in one of these repetitive flood loss areas. And then look at each property individually and help identify potential mitigation measures that could be implemented if a property owner expresses interest now or in the future. So things like acquisition, elevation, drainage improvements, or other sort of individual property mitigation actions. So where we're at right now. So I mentioned part of this analysis includes an opportunity to do some outreach to let all of these property owners know that the city is doing this analysis and that our consultant that we've been working with will be sending a team out into the field to look at each one of these properties, collect data to help us identify potential mitigation opportunities. So those owner notification letters they went out earlier this summer. We got some really great kind of calls and emails from residents throughout the city that received this letter, asking more about the analysis and just kind of what it means for them as a property owner. And we also have a couple people who've already asked for us to send them a copy of the report when it's done. So we were really happy to see that interest in what our team is doing. So after those property owner notifications were mailed out, our consultant team went out and collected their fieldwork. And so that fieldwork has been completed as of the end of last month. And so this field verification really just helps us verify that what we think is going on in a property is actually kind of what's going on in terms of, what kind of foundation type are we dealing with? How large of a house is it? Or, I say house, it may not be a house, it may be a commercial property. Just really gives us an idea of what's happening on the ground, not just in plan view that we might be looking at on a desktop. And what's next? So we just received a copy of the draft analysis report this week. So our team will be reviewing that over the next couple of weeks and providing comments back to help make sure the report is kind of where we would like to see it as a team and is producing the kind of information that we need to make it a usable document. And then that will also help us identify the highest priority things that our team may look at kind of going after in the future as far as mitigation options or opportunity or just potential outreach and education. So we're targeting kind of completion of this entire effort by the end of August. And like Seamus mentioned, this is one of our analyses that will be going before council this fall. So we'll get in front of them and they'll have the opportunity to look at it and ask, questions of our team if they have any questions.
Yeah, and I should have said, and I kind of jumped ahead, sorry, that you guys have heard us talk before about the community rating system, which is a national flood insurance program. It's a voluntary program, but basically the more community does to go above and beyond the expectations of the national flood insurance program, the more of an incentive you get. And in this case, it comes as a reduction to a percentage off everybody's premium in the city. So every flood insurance policy in the city sees a reduction in their flood insurance in that annual premium on their declaration page. So along with the community rating systems are some of these required programs like the repetitive loss area analysis. The next one that I'm going to talk about is not a required one, but it is one that we are rewarded for significantly in terms of points. And basically, the more points you have, the better rated the community is, the better rated the community, the more of a discount the residents get on all their flood insurance policies. So this one here is called the Program for Public Information. All of these programs that we're talking about have been quite an undertaking, and we've been on them for a while, and we're finally getting to the point where we're getting close to wrapping them up or getting them adopted and hopefully getting them adopted and implemented. This one here, the premise of the Program for Public Information really is to, with a lot of this stuff, to make sure that we are doing our best to ensure that the public has a strong understanding of flood risk, of preparedness, how to be prepared. Flood insurance, that's a huge part of the Program for Public Information. Mitigation options that are out there for, repetitive loss properties like Allison was just talking about. And also just to ensure that residents know about the city resources that are available and the state resources and federal resources. There's a ton of stuff that people just don't realize are available, and you really wouldn't unless somebody brought it to your attention. So that's a big part of it. Why it matters, obviously, it raises awareness for flood hazards and preparedness actions. A big part of it, though, is that it's very outreach focused, and so it really helps to make sure, one, that we're targeting the correct people. Two, that our outreach efforts are efficient and effective, but also that our messages are consistent. That's something, across all the different programs that we have in the city of Raleigh, different departments. That is something that we want to make sure that we always pay attention to, because it's very easy for one group to kind of deter a little bit from a general message, and then we're conflicting ourselves. So that's a big, an important factor of it. But also generally it supports stronger floodplain management, and it gets the CRS. What we've done so far, so this is a committee-based program. We have a committee of professionals that are very well attuned to all of this, flood-related issues. And in fact, one of them is a SMAC committee member, commission member. So we were lucky to have a very good committee. We've had 2 committee meetings so far with our city partners, and we basically have sort of touched on what we're doing and what the overall program goals are. Our next steps are next week, actually, in this room. We have our final in-person committee meeting. When I say final, I mean for this year. We have to do 3 meetings a year. It's every year. It's very cyclical. But we will further identify our audiences, our messages, how we're going to deliver them. We will do an all-out flood insurance analysis, really, to look at the number of policies that we have in the city. Are they renters? Are they owners? What type of coverage are we seeing? And then we will talk a lot about how we plan on increasing those numbers. And that's a big part of the PPI, is to do our best to get the number of flood insurance policies in the community to be a lot higher. It also makes a lot of sense, because if everybody's getting a 25% reduction in their flood insurance premium, the more policies we have, the greater the savings. So yeah, that's what we're doing with that. And so this one will not be done until towards the end of the year, and we will put it before council and ask for adoption either at the very end of this year or in the beginning of very, very early next year. Another one that we've been working on is the flood warning and dam failure response plan. And I would say this one is actually, I guess, a very rewarding initiative to be part of. And I think it's because we've been working on it for a long time, but also this has required a considerable not even interdepartmental, a lot of collaboration within the stormwater department. We've worked extensively with Barbara and Stephanie and their teams. And also with police and fire, with emergency communications, with emergency management. And it has all come together very nicely, pretty smoothly too. So it's just been enjoyable. But the purpose of this is that we had drafted out a flood warning and response plan for riverine inundation scenarios. And right before we were going to finalize that, we realized that we were just missing a huge component, and it was the whole dam aspect and dam failures and how we responded. So we took a step back, and we took a big step back, and we got help, and we have somebody helping us develop all this out. But basically, the point of all this is to strengthen our response preparedness to flooding and dam failure events. It also allows us to put all of our maps, all our mapping, ideas, all of our, roles, responsibilities, procedures, everything that we've come up with on the table, and run that through an exercise. And eventually get all of it under one framework, so under this one plan. And so far, and you'll see towards the end, we had done that exercise. We just did it in June, and it was great. And we had a lot of good stuff came from that. But so far, what we've done is the first part of it was we had to get all of the GIS inundation data from all the dam owners. There's 14 high hazard dams in this plan. The city owns a number of them, like the majority, like 8 of them. So for 9 of them. So there weren't too many privately owned dams that we had to get this information for. But in North Carolina, you have to get permission from the dam owner before the state will give you this data. And it was just kind of interesting working with the private owners, because we had to work hard to convince them that we weren't doing anything that was going to negatively impact them. And we really were just using this for, program development stuff. So, but we were able to get all that and, we put together inundation mapping and we have a lot more that we're planning on doing with those maps eventually. We've developed our draft procedures, notifications, emergency coordination actions. We've also pulled a lot from the from the recently updated emergency operations plan under emergency management. So we pulled and reused what makes sense and what's been working for a long time. We've come up with some new procedures, notifications and coordination stuff. And then the tabletop exercise, like I said, we did here on June 24th. We had a lot of city representation. We had people from the county. We had dam safety people from the state. And it was a great exercise. It went really, really well. We developed a lengthy after action report. In fact, we had our planning committee meeting this morning with everybody that was on this plan, on the planning committee for this. And we have a lot of good stuff to add into the plan immediately, but also a lot of stuff down the line that we're going to develop. And each year we have to tweak the plan. Every 5 years we redo it. So, as we move forward, we'll incorporate those changes into the new updated version. And this will be done at the end of this month, and we will be asking council to adopt it in September. So we're very excited about that. This has been a really nice one to work on. This is also a big.
All right. So the three things we've talked about so far are the repetitive loss area analysis, the program for public information, and the dam failure flood warning and dam failure response plan. Are all really focused and targeted on kind of the planning, preparedness, education, and outreach component of what our team does. But another big piece that we've been working on to help reduce flood risk and reduce flood loss in the city is targeted voluntary property acquisitions for houses either located in the floodplain or other flood-prone areas throughout the city. So again, these are voluntary. So these are always owners that are ready and willing to work with the city to sell their property to us at the city. And once we own it, we demolish the structure on the property and maintain it as open space forever. So the idea here is that we are minimizing and reducing future flood losses, and we're allowing a resident who is living in a flood-prone area to really to a more safe, less flood-prone area. And they're getting what is kind of fair appraised market value for their home. So we have a couple of acquisitions ongoing and more to come in the future. So the ones we have ongoing right now, the first one is on Lake Woodard Drive. That one has been fully acquired, executed. We closed on that one. The city owns that property. And we are currently under contract with the contractor to demolish it. We have our pre-construction kickoff meeting next week. So we imagine that demolition will be complete very soon. And the city will, again, own that property and maintain it as open space. We have two more kind of a little bit earlier in the pipeline, one on Crandon Lane and one on Battleford Drive. We're currently under contract on one of them and very close to being under contract for acquisition on the other one. So all three of these acquisitions are completely city funded. So the city is using their flood hazard mitigation funds to pay to acquire and demolish these properties. We also have a fourth that we've been working on for a number of years. This one is funded through the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program with FEMA. So this one is federally funded with the state paying the match. So the city doesn't have any sort of financial contribution on that one. We've been working really closely with the state hazard mitigation team to get this one kind of closed out. The owner of the property has accepted the state's offer to buy their house. And so we are currently working on kind of closing and demolition timelines with the state. So again, these properties are all maintained as open space once the demolition has been completed. And we're really excited to continue working with our kind of other teams within Stormwater to help potentially identify kind of other uses for these properties other than just maintaining them as a grassed or vegetated lot. If there are green infrastructure opportunities to implement SCMs, recreational opportunities with parks. We would love to see more of that happen on some of these vacant properties so that again, we're eliminating recurring flood loss, but also potentially creating a public benefit to these properties other than it being open space and kind of returning to its natural form for flood mitigation.
Yeah, and so And of course, acquisitions, you'll see on the council agendas as they come along. That's not something that is just, one-off thing. As we get the opportunity to acquire something, they have to go before approval. So you'll see those on and on. But basically, just in closing, we were talking yesterday about how we think a lot of this aligns so much with the SMAC, with SMAC's priorities and, you know, just looking at some of this stuff, the repetitive loss area analysis obviously is all about better risk information. That's the whole premise of it. You know, more effective outreach. The program for public information is entirely about outreach. The stronger emergency readiness, that is what the flood warning and the dam failure response plan is all about, is helping us be more prepared and ready to respond effectively. And then permanent risk reduction through the acquisition program. So all of this really does lead to a much more comprehensive and holistic floodplain management program. But, you know, I was thinking about it earlier today. It's even more than that. Like if you look at some of the inundation mapping, you see we have a dam failed, you know, break God, that never happens. But if it did, you know, those impacts are far outside the floodplain in a lot of cases. So generally, so is, you know, flooding in a lot of ways. Water, as we know, does not stay inside these imaginary lines. So this is really this is city stuff. This is full scale city stuff in my mind. And we're really happy to have had the opportunity and we're happy to continue working on these. Our next steps going forward are just finalizing the two plans that are gonna that will wrap up by the end of this month, that we'll put for council. Further develop PPI, and then we will continue obviously with our acquisitions and demolitions of those properties and keeping those properties in open space in perpetuity. So that's why we're here. We just wanted to make sure that you all were in the know for when you see some things starting to pop up in the council agendas, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Christian.
I just want to say I appreciate the forward-thinkingness of the city to fund acquisitions of these properties because you guys know that when you use FEMA funds, it's so restricted that you couldn't do any of the things on those parcels. But if the city does it, you've got the ability to repurpose that land.
Right, and to that point, the hazard mitigation grant program acquisition that Allison was talking about, I've been with the city for 2.5 years. That was already in the works a year before I started. And it's just, and that's the only one that has been federally funded that's wrapping up. We have another one that's been at least 6 years, 7 years in the works for an elevation. And everything just keeps getting reversed. It's just wild. And that doesn't mean that they won't fix this. They will, I'm sure, get back to a place where they are going to be able to, you know, successfully allocate this money out, I hope. But you're right. Most cities, you know, that's not something that a lot of cities could do. And it's wonderful that Raleigh is able to do that. Yes.
So I have that question. I agree. I think that's a really phenomenal program. And I was going to ask about the possibility of looking at sites that can provide co-benefits. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. My question is just, what is the budget category where that funding comes from to do the acquisition by us? Is that part of the stormwater budget? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it? Okay.
It's a CFP line item.
Okay.
Our, flood mitigation. I think
It's called flood hazard mitigation program.
Okay.
And actually, the budget was increased for FY 27. So I think there's $5 million this year is available. So that's a big increase. And I know this team's been working really hard to identify potential properties and already have a couple in the works that would come out of that. So yeah, kudos to Seamus and Allison. They've been working really hard on lots of elements that came out of the CRS, but then even up above and beyond those elements as well.
Just for clarification, there is federal funding. It's just very difficult to get.
Yeah, there is federal funding. You have to be a repetitive, you have to have had a flood insurance policy through the National Flood Insurance Program, number one. You have to have repetitive losses against that policy. And you have to, for the most part, have been affected by a specific storm event at this point in order to get that funding. For us, that's really where we lose out on a lot of that. So yes, there is federal funding. There's multiple programs that you hear about. One of them is called SWIFT. But as far as where we're at right now, there'd just be no point in us applying for anything that's on the table right now.
Yeah, I would say because it's not said they were here before here. Even before that, it was slow going. It's not like what we said.
Yeah, but you got some match from the state.
Correct. Well, on that one on Paramount, yeah. They're matching, so federal and state are paying for it all, and there's a couple other grants that got out there that are paying for it all, but unfortunately, the fastest FEMA moves on stuff like this is if your being actually hit by a storm. And we have not been hit by a storm recently, their regular flood mitigation system does take that's like another balance that this group has made by approaching candidates. If we're using grant funds, then we have to kind of come for recommendations. We're not talking about those. Right. And you don't have any cost of but if we're using city money, that's not on our.
There's so many restrictions on the, when you're using FEMA funds that.
Right.
You can't go above and beyond what the. So there's a difference between what FEMA usually offers and the appraisal and things like that. You run into problems.
And you also have to have flood insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program. So no matter what, and as we know, the cost of that is astronomical in some places. And if you are retiring, if you're older, and you are on a fixed budget and your flood insurance premium doubles, there's nothing you can do about that. And that's a concern for a lot of people.
Well, just for example, I think of it. But at Lake Woodard House, that was a case where they had paid off their house. And they left their flood insurance flat. It is completely floodway. And it's, I mean, it's a house we should have, and it's gonna be a good candidate, I think, for another stormwater project moving forward. So it's good to have that flexibility for us to go and purchase that property. They were an elderly couple, and to be honest, when Allison or Shane was called them, they were actually waiting on some sort of offer. They would feel bad about selling something else, they said, because they know the flooding.
And they had flooded like drastically 3 times. Significant.
Big speed in our house, which is kind of crazy in Raleigh. You know, we're fortunate to not really see events like that very often, but yeah, 6 feet of water in their basement during one event.
But would not be able to get federal funds because they didn't have flood insurance.
So once they pay their mortgage off, they don't want to continue with expensive flooding.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I just have another question, about the repetitive loss program. I'm not exactly sure how to formulate this question, so, be patient with me, but I'm just thinking about kind of the environmental justice lens of looking at repetitive flooding in the city. And I know that, I appreciate that, not only are you looking at places that have insurance, but the adjacent properties in order to kind of capture some of the maybe missing part of the story. I wonder, and I'm asking this without any knowledge of the answer at all, but I wonder, you know, are there a lot of pockets? Could there be pockets that are missing from the story because they don't have anyone in the community who is insured that are just kind of not being highlighted?
Absolutely, yeah, and we didn't talk about it today, but that's another thing that our team kind of maintains and works on is we call it flow map. It's kind of a flood mitigation prioritization kind of or evaluation tool that looks at flooding kind of throughout the city or flood risk throughout the city. We're using kind of the floodplain data. We also use data from the watershed kind of drainage studies as well. That really helps fill in some of those gaps where flooding might be occurring, but they're not in the map, for example. So that in combination with all of these programs that we're doing kind of under the CRS is what we are using when we're looking at potential mitigation opportunities and outreach and education to kind of, again, hopefully try to capture some of those areas where people may not have insurance for any number of reasons. But to answer your question, literally, absolutely, I'm sure there are places out there that if we haven't heard about it, you know, we don't have a way to capture it. Hopefully we can just find a way to capture it in some way. And I know that we get a lot of feedback during the watershed studies, you know, whether or not, you know, that analysis itself produces, you know, certain results about what we're seeing in terms of flooding. Hearing that direct citizen feedback really helps us as well to identify some of those areas. So.
And with that, with the repetitive loss area analysis, I think lumping like more addresses in and more structures in that weren't actually impacted does help paint more of a comprehensive picture of what the flooding risk is there. But we also do it because we have to make the repetitive loss list publicly available in some context without giving away any addresses. It's privacy protected by federal law. So we have to come up with these polygons, and the polygons just pull in random addresses that are nearby in order to hide who really is the repetitive loss. But as our PPI committee members who are so well versed in a lot of this, you know, have been bringing to our attention that the market for private flood insurance is truly taking off. And you know, you're right. We're only seeing repetitive. Well, we're only marking that. You know, we're only noting the repetitive losses that have federal federal policies, and so it's important because you do miss a lot like that. Hopefully, if there is some way for us to gauge who has a private policy, how many there's no way for us to know anything about private policy at this point, so that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I definitely don't have a solution to it. I just think, like you said, kind of expanding the picture and pulling in as many data points as possible.
Yes, and considering this is something we talk about with Lane a lot, when we're talking about acquisition, just making sure that's not our only decision factor, is our repetitive loss list. Looking at the bigger picture of like other ways we have to help quantify flooding or risk in general, is something we definitely do every time we're looking to pursue different opportunities. So your comments take it very well.
Last question. You consider, does the city consider repetitive losses that are not in FEMA study areas?
Yes,
Y'all look at those?
we have a significant number of
Yeah, I would think you
properties
do.
that are outside of not FEMA floodplains. They may be along another creek or water course, but we also have properties that are not along any sort of water course that's more an urban flooding type
Mhm.
issue. Definitely.
Yeah, we're still there. Yeah, one more time, point, and we've made this, but I think it, merits repeating. Another key issue here is when we're talking about National Flood Insurance Program, most of those flood insurance policies are owner occupied because they have a mortgage and their mortgage company makes them buy flood insurance. But 50% of, residents in Raleigh are renters, right? So they don't have a corresponding mechanism that they understand, they have to understand that they are in a flood prone area or in a floodplain. And we've checked, we don't have the authority to require that of landlords. That's just not something municipalities have. So our mechanism is public awareness, education, and in fact, James, if you don't mind taking maybe a brief moment to describe the citywide strategic initiative that you're leading to help improve that awareness of all communities that are flood prone, not just the people that have mortgages and might have flood insurance, but renters as well.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So I haven't said this yet, but I don't think I've even told you this, but just as we were analyzing the flood insurance data in the city, so far we found 2 renter policies. That's it.
Not very many. Yeah.
Right, and with the city that's half renters, that's tremendous, right?
We talked about this like
Yeah.
extensively.
Right.
Last meeting.
And yeah, so we're doing, we're part of this, strategic plan initiative called, it's really just titled, Assisting Residents Live in Flood Prone Areas. And the idea really is to get outside of those, the barriers that typically constrain us to sort of specific spots. We've just, we put together a really good survey to help us understand where people are at as far as their knowledge of their flood risk, what they think would be interesting, what they think would be helpful to guide them in understanding, not only where they're at, but what they can do to better prepare themselves. We put together a survey. We just mailed out about 1,800 flyers. And we were just starting to analyze that data because it's just started coming in on Monday. So that's exciting. And we're going to be using those findings to really put together a completely separate outreach plan that has nothing to do with the program for public information. This is something that is going to be a standalone and really something designed to reach renters, to reach people that live in these areas that, for the most part, they would be drastically neglected based on the way that we are that we have to identify people at this point. So yeah, so we're doing a lot of stuff, and there's tremendous room for improvement, and we're really excited about it.
Thank you guys for everything.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, 2 minutes ahead of schedule. We're gonna have a discussion led by Scott. Here you are, hiding behind there. We're gonna continue our dialogue about our work plan. And we'll go from there.
Good afternoon, welcome back. Summer break.
Keep going.
Okay, FY 27, and excited about building your work plan as you desire. So a couple of things we'd like to do today. Matt's going to help me make you in advance. So from your meeting minutes from June, it's like a long time ago, a few months ago, really we started this discussion, brainstorming about your FY 27 work plan priorities that you would like to work on. These are some of the things that we saw.
We're also concurrently working on our annual report from all the good work from last year. So we've got a couple of things going on. Ariel is leading the annual report. You'll see a first draft of that next month in September. And you also see a first draft with your guidance from today, coupled with from last time, of the work plan. So we'll bring both those to you in draft format in September. And then they will go forward to city council with your approval after that. So we're well on track, as you always are. A reminder for your work plan that this is aligned with the city council strategic plan, as just was mentioned. That's an overarching city council plan. Environmental resilience is one of the key themes in the council's plan that SMAC is very well aligned with. Also, your work plan is aligned with your ordinance charge from council for the commission. And beyond that, you develop guiding themes over the last couple of years that are really longer term in nature. It's one thing that we talked about last time with the commission seemed to generally agree on is that those longer term guiding themes from last year's work plan would carry forward into your new 27 work plan. Those are your high level local areas. What we want to spend more time on today, though, are kind of specific topics or closer to the actual topics that you would hear from throughout the year. And really the way we think about it is that is your series of meetings through 7. We have about 3 or 4 topics per meeting. So it's really thinking about the best use of your time, what you like to focus on for those meetings. And we pull those items from those, we call them high priority topics in your workbook. So here's what we'll talk about real briefly last time. Matt, thank you for helping with that. So again, those guiding themes, we believe they would likely carry forward. They are much longer term in nature. The desire to be informed of, engaged with the stormwater related elements of this comprehensive plan. This will be an area of emphasis in 27 that may have been discussed briefly in 26, but really would be heightened in 27 potentially. That's to define smart GSI. Continues the emphasis on GSI as part of the comprehensive stormwater program. Partnerships were mentioned as part of GSI and things like the Great Raleigh Cleanup and those community organizations that really help align with and support all the commission's goals and stormwater's goals. So engage and collaborate with our Raleigh Water team now that we have merged with Raleigh Water. We see a lot of opportunities there from water quality to flood mitigation to forecasting rainfall, just really partnering on the regulatory requirements for stormwater management and for water resources management in general. Really, the appreciation was noted from Councilmember Jones, her engagement with the commission throughout the year and support and the facilitation there. So continuing that was really of interest. Continue to be involved in those planning cases of stormwater interest, those rezoning cases, stormwater topics, hearing about those and discussions here at the commission around that. Of course, the interest in the growing stormwater capital improvement program. You all are aware that with your support and council support, we're really able to raise the level of service for the capital program this year and going forward using a healthy level of debt financing to really do that. So that's going to be a area that we can bring more specific presentations to you, projects, field tours around those projects. Interest in wetlands at the local level and how that relates to what we're doing here, stormwater management in Raleigh. We do have this July 1st. July 1st is a big milestone for us. 20 Raleigh Water, new fiscal year. Also, our new EPDS stormwater permit came online. So there's going to be presentations and engagement around that while we're continue to bring those forward. Just heard from Seamus and Allison, ongoing engagement with the city's truly growing floodplain management program, all the things that we just heard about now, and there's more on that. Thanks for the presentation, you all. And we talked about the Great Raleigh Cleanup and the partnership. So this was your feedback to us from last time. Were there any questions or clarifications for these items? And then we'll, what we've done, we've taken this feedback. We've also had some internal brainstorming with Wayne and the stormwater staff team of kind of our ideas, staff ideas towards priorities and our goal. And we'll share this with you. So we're taking your comments, our comments, and the next document you see will be a very preliminary listing of potential priority topics for you to add. But first off, any questions about these? Just a quick update. We have checked this council's calendar. It looks like it may be November 4th. Before this going forward, I think the October 20th is allocated, so maybe November 4th, but thereabouts, some planner provides for some good for the city council. Okay, let's take a look at the ideas. Before we get into that, any thoughts just on the work plan in general over the last couple of months? Any brainstorms or topics or things that the commission might have interest in that you've not? You had such a comprehensive agenda thus far. I stress to think about something that you've not covered, but is there anything that you see as an emerging priority before we kind of get into this list right here?
I'm just thinking possibly, since y'all emerged with Raleigh Water now, the sort of Venn diagram of where there's gonna be some things that maybe we didn't consider before that will present themselves as we move forward. I can't say exactly what that is.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that'd be a good opportunity for discussion. We're still pursuing, you know, in figuring a lot of them out. We have a good understanding of several of them, but I think that's a good opportunity for discussion where input from you all could help us too, you know, explore other opportunities.
Decrease gravity.
CIP delivery, we're already talking about that. They have sewer lines along creeks. That when the creeks erode, they can infringe on the infrastructure. We want to do stream stabilization, restrict. So there's, you know, a lot of opportunities for collaboration like that we're already exploring, some we're already doing. But yeah, I think there's more discussion to be had, that your input would be welcome.
Storms or even tweaks on things that we talked about before, then we'll start going. I think we identified about 14 potential items to bring to. Again, these are always draft, so totally draft. We'll continue to add to them and refine them. And of course, then ultimately look up your draft work plan that we present to you.
Can you just scroll through this? Is this what we received in email?
I don't think you've seen this yet.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, they are.
Yes, I thought. Part we've been developing, so it's just the last week or so. So this, let's go through this. So this is our, again, based on your feedback thus far and our ideas, we got 14 potential items. So the first one here, continued engagement with the city's planning commission. We received information regarding development cases of stormwater interest. That's become a standing part of the agenda of the commission, and it's really a really key part of what the commission has been doing thus far, and so that's on there. The second one would be, and this is really one where Graham and Nick helped us on the call the other day, that if and upon direction from council, again, these are always draft, to review and evaluate stormwater standards and requirements for new development and redevelopment. So if that is deemed a council priority, and could be a potential area for the commission to weigh in on.
An interest of ours, and it may be an interest of council, so.
Did we ask them something? They would like for us to do that? Sorry. I guess.
We haven't had the official ask to create this subcommittee. Or question. We haven't asked a question and they haven't asked us to do.
So generally too, you may act on anything council requests. It would not have to be specifically in your work plan. You serve at the pleasure of council to identify, specific questions, address specific questions that they have. So if that did come to you, you could address it. It wouldn't have to be here.
That's right.
As well, just to be clear, sure.
But we need to get council to ask us to do that.
Generally, yes. It would be, good.
Maybe you Stephen can shed light on that. I don't know if you heard what we're.
Yes, I've heard. And I think this is something that we can decide together as a board and your liaison. Would it be best for, if you have a request to come from me and ask for that direction of council, do you want to do it within your work plan? I think here it's kind of, which way do we want to go? So I'm here to support if that request needs to come from me, that's 100% fine. So know that we can put that together and then I can make that motion at the table to have that sent to you. Or you can add in your work stuff there. So I think either option, whichever one you're comfortable with.
Yes. Yeah, I'll follow up with you. Yeah. That's good. And certainly that you can see anywhere when you you see multiple discussion topics around that could even take more. This is sort of a new engagement, the city's comprehensive planning specific to the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is being updated, your council's direction, and so the stormwater elements of that, the commission's input, perhaps receiving presentations from the planning team, receiving the commission's feedback on those elements. It could be a very timely topic for 27. Continued engagement with the Raleigh Rainwater Rewards Program. Justin gave an excellent summary of the pavers today and some of the policies there, but ongoing review of policies, thresholds, and all the things that we're doing as that program has grown now significantly. It continues to do so. Special. This is what we just heard from Seamus and Allison. Continue to engage in the floodplain program that developed so rapidly with the CRS program, the technical partner program, and flood hazard mitigation program and projects. This is presented today, so there's a lot around that. So I think there's around 14. These are sort of random. They're real order to these at this point. We would anticipate at the next meeting with your input here, if any tweaks or additions or changes or deletions, actually have requests that you prioritize these. So just like we did, I think last year during the meeting, the prioritization tool we have. Understand the integral benefits and collaborative opportunities of Stormwater's merger with Raleigh Water to help advance the one water concept of really comprehensive water resources management. So a lot of things that we've always spoken, many connections there between stormwater and water resource, Raleigh water resources, and we could explore those there so the commission could have input to those and also vice versa. There's usually at least a couple presentations around here on the budget as we get towards in this case, it'll be the FY28 budget for operations and for the CIP. That the program has grown in recent years with your support and council support. So it's always the opportunity for the commission to weigh in on that level of service, what those rate proposals may be. Ultimately, that would be then presented to the city council for their consideration. The flood early warning program continues to grow. We track these storms while we've had a bit of a drought now, and we're thankful for the rains to have come back. You know, we want them to come gentle though, but they tend to come with some intensity and can cause some flooding. So we're tracking that. We want to stay ahead of flooding, make the public aware of these potential hazards. And we usually bring at least one presentation, the tropical season forecast, what we're doing around flood warning, actually the spring time. Each of the operational services, we had a tour of drainage maintenance team's equipment here, and that's always, I think it's one of the highlights of the year. Also, potentially staff would suggest that we add to that theme this time, how we're handling GSI maintenance, how we're handling dams. It's got to come up today. It's city-owned operated dams, and how we're helping to get that. And it's always resolve measures. Ongoing support and engagement with the Drainage Assistance Program and projects there as they go forward. The rest of it, engagement watershed planning, related public outreach, engagement efforts. Team did a tremendous job of looking at watersheds, which is really the ideal way to look at all the things to order quantity, quality, and now even as we look at water resources issues on a watershed basis, how those elements fit together. See a desire in the notes of discussion and the tours that we've had for the commission to maybe heighten involvement with CIP program. That's been one of our largest annual expenditures, really, that's growing. So we see opportunities there to include some more field tours, Of course, continued support for GSI. There's a GSI master plan that has recently begun, and there will be chances to engage with that project during 27, fiscal 27. And then we mentioned our new NPDES permit. Under that NPDES permit is a stormwater management plan. So there's engagement from the commission in that. That's the 14. Yeah, that's it. So there's 14 for starters. Yes, Wayne.
And just wanted to kind of put in the context, just as a reminder, the implications of these high priority work items. As you see on the agenda, Scott does a really nice job referencing the work plan items in your agenda. So the implications of picking these priorities is Scott is, once you select your highest priorities, Scott's going to work very hard over the course of the next year of bringing the informational topics as well as the policy decisions that we would like your input on related to these specific items. So, you know, you can go back and see, and Scott does a very organized matrix of each priority and which ones we presented on, and what types of policy decisions or other information that we want to bring to the commission so I just wanted to kind of remind everybody of those implications in terms of setting your agenda for the next year.
Thank you for that, Wayne. Thank you, Commissioner. We seek to align those specific topics with the council strategic plan. And then also with your work plan as we go throughout the year. And you've done a tremendous job, by the way. We've started doing that just the last couple of years and, you know, documenting, really have checked all the high priorities. That being said, that we always have flexibility throughout the year. Something, you know, a topic arises or a project or something to talk about, you know, the commission wants to bring forward. So this doesn't, you know, necessarily max out your agenda for fiscal year 27. We usually build in some space as we go. Some of these will be 2 presentations, sometimes 3, some might be 1, but we always have some flexibility to put this in. And we really appreciate the process for how we do this. So we build your work plan with your input for your approval, goes to city council. And then as we go throughout the year, we also develop the draft for each agenda, try to do that pretty early in advance. Then we have SMAC leadership team meet with us. Here's the draft agenda. We refer that back to the work plan. Any new items, for example, the House Bill 162 was one that we added this time, I think, is an emerging thing. So we're always looking for what are the priority topics as we go. So we have a plan, we work that, but then we're always open to what's coming today. So any thoughts on these?
Is it long enough or you want more or less or good length?
This is a little bit more than you had last year.
That's why.
Yeah, that's why we're still in the football mode.
It's in the ballpark. It's actually, I think, one more item than you had last year, and arguably there's a few things there. Maybe a couple. So it's probably a little bit more. You did a great job last year. The only things that really weren't maybe covered last year was the NPS permit, which was not issued until June this year. So
Was it a 5-year permit?
it is a 5-year permit.
Yeah.
The NPS permit. So
Is there anything you guys think we need to add? I'm sure you've already added.
Yeah, what do you talk about, Jerk? I mean, what, you have weekly or monthly leadership meeting? What's the hot button issue? What are you freaking out about this
A lot
year?
of stuff.
I mean, what's- Yeah, I mean, we got, I feel like we got everything covered here, but I mean, what is it for the next 3 months, 6 months that you guys are like?
You know, the flooding, I think the floodplain issues, the CRS, we're having a lot of discussions about how we can better integrate our watershed master planning and the modeling efforts with that, with the floodplain modeling and mapping aspects. That's an important collaboration. There's always discussion of all of the asset management. We mentioned Yonkers Road, right? So we have I think our much more robust infrastructure condition assessment program, and we have a lot more information than we ever have. And we sometimes even identify known issues, but sometimes we can't deliver a capital project quickly enough to get those. So alternative delivery mechanisms. We've got a consultant, I think we've mentioned, on board to help us with owner's representative for design build implementation. So that's something that we're looking at to accelerate our implementation. We've got another consultant that's helping us with a program that we used to have, but don't right now, is an on-call construction program where we can put out bids, but have unit price items much more defined in those, that we can add more work to those construction contracts for smaller, very standard types of projects that are, you know, pipe replacement types of projects that may have very standard components. So that's another delivery mechanism. So those types of things that we can bring to you, that now that's related to the capital improvements program. But if you were interested in, you know, specific aspects of how we're trying to accelerate that program, that could be a discussion item too.
If you do the debt financing, if you do the financing, you're gonna have more ability to roll projects faster, but then you gotta figure out how the hell to roll projects faster.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
It's coming, so.
So those, we have sort of put that out on, what do we see, these are our priorities right now, and you come in, you know, a few months early this fiscal year, and they should be captured. Well, again, we want to build in flexibility for things that arise.
Yeah.
Commission's interest, you know, receive input and direction from council as we go throughout the year, and there's time built in to accommodate those as we go. That being said, it certainly build out most of the year's agenda based on these.
There's value to be general in this, and right, because it allows us to learn about or address a lot of situations in the stormwater world, but it's also value to say, oh, that's one thing that's really kind of interesting and we should go play with it. That's the goal.
Sorry, I was gonna, you know, similar thought on there's things on here that, you know, that, you know, a lot of our role is a support role, you know, understand, bounce ideas off of. And so I went from this long list, you know, not trying to, like the things that are stormwater, all the amazing things that the stormwater team, are actually doing. But it's, you know, maybe if you have to shorten the list at all, it's to say, what can we add the most value as a group, or, you know, and secondary, if it's not direct value, what can we heighten the awareness of by having that as a topic? And so I think kind of wearing those, we've had some others, but all of these, I think the discussions we've had so far, and with the help of stormwater team, but highlighting already the long list, is because you're doing so much that we get to kind of highlight it on, but really it's just what the average value wants it as a.
That's great feedback. Yeah.
Next.
Right.
Like we do with random.
If there's some more, we'll add. If you want to take any off, we can do that or tweak these, but yeah, to the point. So we have, again, kind of the frame we're thinking about where these come in. These are close to your actual specific topics, but they're still somewhat general, as Mayor mentioned. So we've got the council strategic plan, you've got the ordinance requirements for the commission, and then you've got your guiding themes, which we looked at last time. Budgets and plan, and then we get to these high priority topics, which are more specific but still general. You know, a little bit of both. Some of these you can actually see very close to a topic. Others still are sort of an umbrella for a topic or topics, multiple. So a lot of flexibility in that regard. But next time we anticipate we're bringing back that draft final. Let's meet and say, to the point, which are, these are all high priorities, which are your highest, and maybe your next topic.
I was just thinking about something that maybe could go up here more explicitly, and it's not a huge part of our work, but we perennially talk about youth education, and we get to weigh in on some of the like initiatives regarding making kids aware of stormwater issues. And I know that outreach is up there in engagement, but I think it's like pertaining specifically to watershed planning. And I wonder if we could put something about outreach and education, and especially, I mean, the green stormwater infrastructure work with kind of like training future workforce and youth education around that. I just wonder if there's a way to kind of like highlight that we're also looking at education initiatives, not even just youth, but kind of just generally education and outreach initiatives.
There's a lot, and I think there's at least one presentation from George in last fiscal year about things like that, great work with getting schools and the community events, and we do a lot of that. Yeah, so we can certainly, sort of break that out as its own area, because it's a huge component of worship plan, but it's also, there's a lot of things that are outside of worship planning that we're doing every day around that.
What you said, a little bit about lifting up things and or bringing awareness or being differently engaged in the community, I guess, as a commission.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is one of our guiding themes, but how we word it from a priority topic, I think is worth looking at.
As we go throughout the year, we'll have to work the plan to be pretty comprehensive and planning there, but as we go, if we have all ideas, certainly we'll bring those to direction.
Would there be, just in response to that, would there be words you would like to add to the continued engagement for watershed planning, maybe to make it a little bit more specific to including, youth outreach or education, some other education? Or do you see that as another separate one?
I think I was suggesting kind of pulling out the education piece because it applies to so many other parts of the work outside of watershed planning, including GSI and all the other pieces.
Yeah, I'd like us to be more engaged with understanding of the watershed planning, but then, yeah, I would definitely separate it out. But probably just the idea that what does that become? I don't know.
Okay. It's good. We'll try to break that out. And I think that's a breakout on your, maybe 8 weeks or something, so we got at least one more breakout. So on 15. I just want to say, go back to the staff, we really appreciate your input on everything we do every day. And your work plan is really a chance to highlight the great work of SMAC, but it also supports things that we're doing daily at the staff level, at the program level. So, in the annual report, in the same way, it highlights commission's leadership and then all the things that the SWIM program is doing. And now as we merge with our partners in Raleigh Water, that's going to add another benefit there and the resources that we can align with, which is going to, we believe, continue to grow the program.
Yeah, so just to reiterate too, I think you said this, but so the next meeting, we will come back and use a phone voting tool to list your priorities, to help then rank them. I don't know, my suggestion would be not to have more than we had last year. It's this balance of, spreading it too thin versus focusing more on the ones that are the most important. I would suggest no more than 10 to 12, maybe. And again, we've got time. I think Scott touched base on every one of the last ones, but like a couple of them maybe only had one presentation part of one meeting. So it does limit you a little bit if you'd rather dive a little bit deeper into some of the other topics and get 3 or maybe 4 presentations over the course of the year. So, think about that too. Not only what are the priorities, would we rather stop at 10 or 11? I think we had 13 this past time, which was doable, but maybe a little bit more. And then we've added like 3 more now. So we're up to 16. So,
But you could almost consolidate on ongoing support for drainage assistance, stream stabilization, and Raleigh rainwater rewards in a way. We hear rather consistently about those projects, right? So that they're, there could be ways for standard things we do.
So definitely.
Matt, I'm scrolling up this year.
Is there a way, the trustee spreadsheet that you've been developing, I know kind of summary, just so we know when we're ranking, what that actually looks like, when we're talking about ongoing support for that, as far as the role that we would play in doing that, or how we could, that might help, our framing of, inform our ranking of that.
Some of that was staff ideas around what because each one may carry a little bit different weight in them. For example, the budget is really about 2 presentations at least. Some of these others may be in 1 presentation. Or if there's something that people want to do, so we could put some ideas around that.
Or even have we done a lot of those passes, you know, what that would look like.
Yeah, and say for a clarification on that drainage assistance stream stabilization program, we're gonna bring you the projects for approval regardless of whether that's a work plan item.
Right.
Making it a work plan item would include, do we need to revisit those policies and make any changes? Like you might recall, I think it was last year, we did bring you, Chad's brought you updates for the drainage assistance policy, the stream stabilization policy, how those work, right? And you all did send recommendations to council, which they subsequently adopted. So those policies have been updated relatively recently. So that could not be a priority for next year. We would still bring you the projects for approval because that's part of your charter, basically. But you might not focus on making changes to those policies and programs. So it's just a distinction of what it means to have it on here versus not. That helps.
And with that, though, I do think there seems to be a little bit of movement in the Raleigh Stormwater Rewards program about possible wording, possible policy changes.
Yes.
There's now that entity that they're hiring to do some management on. I got an email link to this. So,
yep.
So that may stay on as there may be some value to some things that we would want to be involved in.
Correct. Same issue there.
Yeah.
We'd still bring you the projects. If it were on this priority list, we would look at policy programs, programmatic changes. Correct.
Discussion. What's the commission's ideas? Is there a staff to say, with your today merge, consider maybe 10 of these in terms of your ranking, 10 or 10 of these? Or does it? Okay.
I'd say it doesn't. It'd be great if it were 10.
There are definitely a couple that can be kind of merged.
Yeah, I think
on the
so.
list, just reading it.
It's like 11 years, right?
Yeah. Correct.
So. Thank you.
But I do like the idea of a little easier topics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That are-
Exactly.
So I think, Scott, your guidance was we can typically do about 3 items a meeting.
Right.
So 11 meetings, so that's 33 quote topic presentations.
Right.
Maybe a little fewer if we have a more in-depth field tour or something like that, but yeah, maybe 30-ish, I think is what you were talking.
30, that's right.
Is the second one the same as the last one, kind of, is there a go out there, there's 2 different? That's water standards, and the last one's look at regulatory. Very last time we looked at it. Development of city stormwater management.
That's a very good question. This is actually, I think, specific to the EPS stormwater program, I believe.
Yeah, that's that last stormwater management plan is something to meet at our MS4 permit specifically versus the other one is more general regulatory review.
That's not a priority of this commission. You're gonna make it a priority of this commission because you need to do it to get the permit.
Yes, we would need to bring it to you for approval anyway, regardless of whether it's more a matter of maybe how engaged you are in the development of that plan.
Yeah, and based on your weight of priorities, there's probably a number of presentations around that we could bring, but we could bring one or a few if it's not your highest priority.
Are you still looking at like a stormwater credit type of system?
That's something that we had looked at and put on pause, but if that's something you'd like to bring back, that would be an option too. We can put that down and put it on the list
I
for.
mean, I'd like to.
That's a mitigation credit.
But for the city, more
But yeah,
like alternatives to what's available right now.
Yeah.
I think the state's gonna review their rules.
And it might be, for example, ways that, property owners could, things they could implement to get a credit on their utility bill, I think.
Tina was talking about, if you wanna, do something like that.
Incentives and or credits.
Yeah, or if the city's buying these properties and they wanna put net CM on them and get credits for whatever reason, whether it's for their stormwater permit.
Yeah. The mayor wants to be called a sponge city. So
That is,
The city's
that's
buying
kind of city initiative,
property.
the catch on the top end.
Yeah.
And I think that is a great idea, a difficult thing to achieve in practice. Funding would be one word.
Sponging.
That was
The
fun.
theme of 2027, sponging.
That's good. So we'll capture that and add it back. So was there a consensus around a dozen? Think of the ones that merge a few of these, one that we could even potentially come off around discussing the way you just mentioned there, the grant.
We know we still have certain things we're gonna, like you say.
Yeah.
They're gonna be, yeah, that's great to think about, them, not as priorities.
So the rest of the work plan has still everything else, and you can always pull in topics from that.
Yeah.
There's plenty of, and I think there is a brief area here about around the fee credits and incentives, but if that was something we definitely look at the commission. Credit policy has not been updated, I think, since the inception of the program. There's a brief update at some point, this one, but nothing too significant. But it's largely where it was back in 2004.
Yeah.
That's something you guys have to look at it, like you said, it was on the table, there was a little bit of. But I think. You're clear.
You know, but for example, we'll put it on the list.
Yeah, I think it's always worth it, like we do in the policy and regulations, just give something fits now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
for the city more than for state regulation.
Yes. Thank you for organizing this. Good luck with the next month reorganizing.
Our next call.
I trust that the magic will be created here.
Certainly, if there's any ideas that you come up with, email, we'll bring them back and send out the list a week in advance so that you can look through it one more time and have any final thoughts to bring to the meeting. And so we'll have some time for discussion, and then the voting exercise too.
And that correspondence can happen, but conversation can't happen. So you can have a conversation, I mean, at a meeting, right? Like, you can say, hey, I'm suggesting this to the end of the list.
Yes,
But then we need to discuss it in a public.
correct. That's correct. That's correct. Good clarification. Yeah, just send us any ideas you might have if we can add those. But yeah, the discussion needs to take place.
Bring it back to the discussion. Again, what happens, Stephanie, thank you. You have a very comprehensive, we're a little bit biased, but I think a very comprehensive work plan it is. But it really highlights the good work and growing and really ever growing importance of stormwater for our community. Thank you so much. We'll bring back the survey next time. We'll do our work to try to find around a dozen of these. And then that will allow us to really finish the draft final, which you'll see a little bit more comprehensive draft of this full document in September with these included. And then from your feedback in September, do a draft final that will be ready for October, early October. And your work plan your annual report will also be ready. Thank you all so much.
When will our photos be taken? When do we need to get our hair done and stuff? So, it's, sometime in the next couple of meetings, right? Well, we have gone there. Ariel always hits us with, hey, we're gonna go outside and take photos. Oh, yeah.
Individual photos.
Yeah,
So
those
there will
that's
only be
right.
a few of you
Okay,
who will
that's good.
need updates, and unless you want a new photo, you
Yeah.
don't like the old one.
Yeah.
You can just
You can
keep
say
looking
that
at your
in
younger.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Shannon. Definitely. Thanks to Ariel for everything she does. We do have some preliminary topics for September through November, so please review that and also give us information, give it to Nicola and I, if you guys have some ideas that you want to hear some things in September, October, November, anytime. Because we pre-meet with Scott and Wayne to kind of talk about the agenda about 7 to 10 days out. So just certainly let us know if we know of an item out there in the world.
Anybody going to the APWA Stormwater Conference?
Yeah, not going. Yeah.
That one, out from all.
Motion to adjourn.
When is that? Is that before?
It's in September.
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 It's in September.
Wednesday.
We'll add your presentation.
Yeah. Are you speaking at it? Will you make your presentation? Okay. You'll give us a download.
What's the highlights?
5-minute download.
What did you?
Is Ben going to it? You going to? Scott's going to it. Okay. Yeah, Scott, Josh.
Sorry, I made a comment about Winston and I forgot to say.
Well, Nashville this year. So, yeah. All right. Well, with that, yes.
I just wish we were discussing what to do in September. I did hear from staff, like I said earlier, that we'll be as council discussing our water supply issues in September, October. So if I could just put a like, please, if you guys could discuss that in September, then I can incorporate your thoughts into what we discuss at the table. So if it all, I understand if that's too much, but it would be really helpful for our conversation to have your feedback on that. So.
That would be great. I don't know where to start. So I would look for some help. Okay, it looks like we're gonna look at regulatory requirements for water supply, watershed protection areas.
Yeah, is that come from, is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Anything having to do with it, you don't need to talk about the exact topic that we are, you know, we're gonna be talking about supply, but I'd like to incorporate it. So I'm not asking you to opine on the bigger thing, just on what you're
Okay.
already discussing.
Yeah, but we're in the, like watershed a little bit, or is this all being watershed?
There's, yeah, go ahead, Ben, there's very much.
Everything going for the strict road of his proposal.
Yeah, so they're getting the state right now.
Yeah.
Like a stormwater not issue with our drinking water supply that would be pertinent to.
This watershed protection overlay conversation, is it only gonna be Falls Lake focused or was it going to be?
It was gonna be about every portion of worship we've had.
Okay.
So it falls within the year.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be so helpful,
Okay.
just to hear just that portion. You don't need to do anything bigger than that.
Okay, great. So can we move that to September? Is that possible?
Just to add one idea to that,
It says September, October, so. Yeah, sorry.
maybe not for September conversation, but just one thing that's kind of been kicking around in the back, and it's probably more to do with the water side of things than stormwater side of things, but just looking long term, I know that there's some conversations right now about what happens when we have to move away from Falls Lake as a drinking water supply. And there's a lot of conversations about where water is going to come from, and that's not a long term, that's more of a short term, like next handful of years thing. And so I just wonder if there's room for a conversation about that. Some of the ideas that are being thrown around, I know some things like flowing water out of the Neuse is an option, which would make all of Raleigh a water supply watershed. And that would change everything, I think, for regulatory purposes. So just kind of what that would look like would be an interesting conversation.
Who's leading that conversation regionally? Is it the
I
county?
think that, I mean, is it you?
Yeah, I mean, Raleigh clearly is involved. I believe that discussion was part of Wake County One Water study as well, looking at alternatives like that. But yeah, that's something that we could, especially if Raleigh Water is clearly involved in that, if that would be a topic. you'd like to bring back. Yeah. Because, you know, I always have to look for a stormwater connection, but I think Commissioner Crockett mentioned it. If there's an implications, it might have more stormwater controls in different parts of Raleigh. That would be the stormwater connection to those types of decisions, right?
So in September, we can have a conversation about the current protection overlays, as we understand them, and the ongoing work in falls, whatever that state plan is. And then moving forward in the fall, we can maybe have Raleigh Water come in and talk about watershed planning and, or, drinking water supply planning in general. Is that?
Sure.
I mean, is it that urgent? I'm just trying to figure out.
Is that a realistic thing to pump drinking water from the Neuse right now?
That's the alternative.
Very
source.
real.
That's the
That's
secondary. Tertiary.
I would also recommend getting the individuals at the state that are driving that train, possibly speak to us.
Yeah. Okay. At one point, it was gonna be a Little River, and it's all gone.
It's a Little River Reservoir.
That's still on, that's still on,
They're still-
no, that's still on the thing.
All that land is still on
I
it.
haven't seen it on the asking.
They're reviving
15
the
years ago,
conversation.
Yeah. Did they even some land like that?
If some of it's sitting on it, you know, bunch. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a good bit of
No,
land
no.
that the county actually owns, I think.
Yeah, the county.
Like Benton.
So it's everyone.
But there's stormwater play with that. Have to be some stormwater regulations.
Wait, cars at that point, yeah, yeah. So. All right, so it sounds like lots of conversations. Someone wants to make a motion, and I think I know what motion is. 4:59.
Actually, your turn.
Yeah, we got a second.
Motion in a second. I don't know who gets first and second there. All in favor of adjourning? Okay, thank you, guys.